You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
Hi, I'm Peter Reinhardt, and welcome back to Pizza Quest. Well, today's a little bit different because we're not going to be talking too much about pizza, and those of you who are regular listeners and viewers of Pizza Quest know that it's really more about the quest than it is about the pizza. And today we're going to put that focus on the quest with an old friend of mine, longtime childhood friend who has had an interesting journey of his own. So I want to introduce you to my friend Tim Lorsch, who's joining us from Nashville, Tennessee. Tim, welcome to Pizza Quest.
Thank you, Peter. My pleasure to be here with you.
And let me tell everybody what we're going to talk about a little bit, because when I last saw you in person, that was 20 years ago when I was in Nashville, and we had some tea together out on the porch of Pancake House there, and since then we've stayed in touch, via Zoom and text and all sorts of other stuff. But at that time, your focus was really still you're a studio musician and a musician, traveling musician, in the Nashville music scene. You when I knew you in junior high school and high school, you were a violinist in the orchestra, in the band. You were an actor. I think if I'm not mistaken, I think you were in the junior high school production of Oklahoma.
I was Allie Hakem.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were always, comfortable performing. But then as we moved on in our lives and you got into your, the next stage of your journey, you became a musician. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because that is its own quest, because it's not easy to make it in the music world, that's for sure. But since then, you have developed something that, you're taking, it's a performance piece that you are taking around the world called the Suitcase. And Tim, why don't you just explain to people briefly what it's about, and then we'll play a little clip from the video that you sent us with some of the music that you put on it and some photos. But what is the Suitcase?
Well, essentially, here's the story. In the summer of 2015, Miroslav Berger, a citizen of the Czech Republic, found an old suitcase in an antique shop. And it turned out to be the suitcase that my great uncle Julius took to the Nazi concentration camps. And Mr. Berger airmailed the suitcase to me. I mean, I can go into great detail about the whole story, but he basically airmailed the suitcase in Nashville. And I created a one-man multimedia show using looping music on violin, octave violin, and cello, narrative, and some videos and photos that tell the story of the suitcase and my family history before, during, and after the Holocaust.
So, I know it's a long story for how he possibly found you, 50 years later, 60 years later with this suitcase, and knew that it was yours. But why don't we show a little bit of a snippet of the suitcase itself, and play a little bit of the music, and then you can fill us in after we look at that.
Okay, if we're going to show the video of the music, I thought I would just say that most musicians who loop use a looping pedal, which is basically a recording device that they activate with their feet that tells when to record and when to play and when to stop. And I've done it a different kind of way. I've pre-programmed all those pedal moves into computers. So this way, once the start button is pressed, I don't have to do anything else. The computer knows exactly when I'm going to play which part and puts it all together. So it's like the music has been composed and prearranged, but no music has been pre-recorded. It's all live. And that's what this...
So is that kind of like overdubbing? Is like when it loops in, is it dub, like what you played before plays over or in harmony?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's overdubbing, right? Or layering. Overdubbing is usually something that you think more of in a studio. But yes, I'm definitely overdubbing one part on top of another. Exactly.
Okay, well,
it's kind of like...
Let's take a look at what it looks like when you do it, and then you can explain further when we come back.
Sure.
Okay, for those who are only... Okay, and so we got a chance to see you, in the looping process and hear some of the music looping around itself. So, and then the music is very evocative. It captures a kind of a mood and atmosphere, which obviously is about the story. So was that you when we saw on the video? Was that you actually in performance mode? Do you stand on the stage in a tie with your violins and then narrate?
Exactly. As a matter of fact, that video was shot this past Sunday. I did a performance at a church here in the suburbs of Nashville. And yeah, and that piece, I do about 8 or 9 musical pieces, I'd say, that are 5, 6, 7 minutes long. And I precede each one of those pieces with a narrative. Now, that particular piece was the assimilation, where before it, I'm speaking of how, I mean, I do go into detail about how Jews were discriminated against historically, for a good 1,000 years, and how in the 1800s in Germany they started to have freedoms and they were really starting to prosper. And so this is when Jews are kind of confronted with the question: am I going to be more Jewish or am I going to be more German? Yeah. And so this is when people are deciding, we're going to be safe here. People are welcoming us. All those pogroms, that's in ghettos, are in the past. And so we're going to be Germans. And so that's kind of what assimilation was. And that's what this particular piece was.
And that's the most recent assimilation in our lifetime. But assimilations of this nature have been going on for the Jewish people for 3,000 years, from when they were carried away into Babylon and to Assyria and Persia. And they always had to face the same question. Spain, you name it. Do I assimilate and become, one of those, or do I hold true to this unique faith that constantly makes everybody uncomfortable?
That is so beautifully put. But yes, that is kind of the Jewish question, we can call it, or something like that. And yes, and it's certainly going on even today in modern times. And as a matter of fact, the last piece of the whole program is Assimilation Part 2, where I talk of my experience growing up. And, especially in this time of, just kind of what it was like for us to grow up.
Yeah. So we certainly grew up in an area where you and I grew up. We were the Jewish community was a small section of a much larger white Anglo-Saxon Protestant community and a Catholic community and a little bit of other minority groups that were there. But we were just one of many groups. But we were part of the whole. We went to a high school in which everybody pretty much got along, and assimilation was happening, whether we knew it or we didn't even know the word then. But we were
right. Yeah, exactly right. It's I mean, it's been amazing. You talk about a quest, and I look upon the Suitcase. For me, it's just kind of like how all these disparate parts came together. I mean, I grew up playing music, and I've spent my entire life doing music. Technology has kind of caught up and allowed me to do something like this by myself, because if the technology wasn't there at the age I'm at, I never could have found, I would have had to have 6, 7, 8 musicians at the same time playing to create this music. And that production-wise would have been just too expensive, too difficult to pull off. I don't think I ever could have gotten this program off the ground if I had to do that. So technology came up. Two of my cousins interviewed my parents and one grandmother in the 1980s. And so I had about 10 or 12 hours of interviews from which some of these stories came. And I actually include a short excerpt of my grandmother speaking to just kind of help bring that into focus. But my wife, Karen, and I transcribed them over the years, and they formed the basis for some of the stories. And then I had boxes and boxes. Photography was really starting to come of age in the early 20th century. And I have boxes and boxes of old family albums, and I got to use them also. So all these things. And then, of course, the icing on the cake is the Suitcase showing up.
The Suitcase, like the trigger that brings it all together.
Yes, exactly. Now, here's the thing. The way this gentleman found me is in the 1990s, a woman named Rishi Savin, who's a genealogist, and she's one of these amazing people. She has made it her mission to bring together people that have been separated by the Holocaust. And she's a genealogist, and I mean, on the highest level possible. And she is in some of her husband's relatives are named Lorsch. They share my last name. So we can kind of say she's in charge of the Lorsches. And all the genealogists in the world who are really deep into this, they all know that. So when Miroslav Berger posted a photo of the suitcase online, it only took about 4 or 5 connections for he posted it on a genealogical website, and that eventually made its way in just 1, 2, like about 3 contacts made it to Rishi. And of course, my last name being so unusual was helpful, and then it was easy to track down, I mean, who Julius was. So that's.
Julius was your grandfather, or was he?
Julius was one of my paternal grandfather's brothers.
Okay.
So he was a great uncle.
Okay. Julius Lorsch. And so basically 3 degrees of separation between Julius and all these genealogists to be able to find you, which stuff couldn't have happened without the modern technology and communications.
Exactly.
And then you get the suitcase, or they does she contact you and tell you she has a suitcase? Did you just send it to you, or how did that happen?
He sent it to me, and I don't, just because it's such a just an incredible act. He is Catholic, and due to the Catholic Church's role during the Second World War, for his penance, he has made it a mission to find and return belongings of Holocaust victims to their families. Now, in this case, he and his wife were restoring some old Eastern European car. And you know how in the old MGs, they had that wire rack that you could strap a suitcase on the back? Well, this European car had the same thing. So they were looking for a suitcase to do a similar thing. So they bought the suitcase, and I don't know whether or not the second of the suitcase photos can be put up now, the one that shows the inner lining.
We'll see if we can find them, and keep talking, and we'll put them up as well.
Anyhow, if you look at that, so in other words, they bought it, and then if you look at that liner, there's a stain over where my great uncle's name is. And what I'm assuming is that was covered up by something, and so they brought it home and then took off that whatever's covering it, maybe a piece of cloth.
We're looking at it.
Then they saw
this video. We're looking, and we've seen that photo, and we can see the stain, and we can see the writing is still very, very bold and clear.
Right, exactly, it is. And so they then posted that, and that is an address in Berlin. My father thinks or I can't remember who told me, but we're thinking that was SS headquarters in Berlin, that particular address. And I wrote to Yad Vashem in Israel, and they said that number there was actually just his personal number for the journey from Berlin to Theresienstadt. That was not the number that was tattooed on him. That was a different number.
In Berlin, was that where he was based, or was he in Czechoslovakia?
Yeah, he lived in Berlin. He was kind of a stockbroker, and they were there until August of 1942. He was working in an electrical plant of some kind. This was forced labor, but he was working there, but they were still in Berlin. And then they were transferred to Theresienstadt, and they stayed there until May of 1944. And they were sent to Auschwitz, and they actually were murdered on December 31st. And what I always say is, they may have missed surviving the war by just 27 days, for Auschwitz was liberated on January 27th, 1945. And something I'm now kind of trying to chase down is, why was a gentleman who was almost 70 years old kept alive for this long? because everything that I've read about the Nazis was, unless they had a use for you, they were going to kill you immediately. They were just going to shovel you right into the ovens once it all started.
That they keep you alive for as long as you were serving their purposes.
Right, exactly. And so when they actually murdered them, that was when they were trying to erase all vestiges, any trace of what it was that they had done. They were just trying to really hide it. But anyway,
the story through your family's photos and history, did you already know some of this story before you even saw the suitcase, or did it all come into focus after you got the suitcase?
I knew the stories of my mother and my father, how they got out of Germany, and I knew a little bit about some of the others, but my parents, the way they did it was they never talked about any of this stuff. They decided that they were just going to put all that behind. I mean, that's just kind of how they were. That's happened, and we're moving onward and forward. Whereas my father's sister, who actually lived, she had two children, my older cousins, and they actually lived with my grandparents. They, on the other hand, maybe perhaps because they were living with my grandparents, they talked about it all the time. So they knew much more about it, and it helped me out enormously. But the stories, and also I have to say, I wasn't that interested in it. I was just a self-centered person.
We were all very distant from all that. We were one generation away from having to deal with it directly, and so we never really did deal with it.
Right. And also, I mean, that's the whole thing, is growing up in the United States. We grew up in the 50s, where at least if you were a white person, you had, it was the golden era. I mean, it was all the post-war baby boomer thing. We experienced that all, and it was that anything was possible, space technology. I mean, you go on and on. I mean, there was no end to what could be done. And the other thing was that, I mean, look, my parents, they came to this country. My father eventually got a PhD. I mean, we were fairly well off. I mean, we weren't rich or anything, but, we went skiing. We took 2-week vacations. So, I mean, we were completely insulated from the horrors that only one generation before had taken place. And so, yeah, you hear stories, but I mean, it is hard to visualize war, atrocity, being beaten up, having everything taken away from you when you're really living in 1950s America. Dwight's president, all is good.
Exactly. So the suitcase arrives, and talk a little bit about what that triggered for you, and how you then put the show together.
Well, I had wanted to do something to honor my parents and grandparents musically, and I had a few slow periods in the 2000s and the 2010s where I kind of started to write music. And then by then I had a recording studio of my own and was, able to kind of create music if I really wasn't working for anyone else. And so I loosely had all these ideas, and I'd done a lot of research, and by then we had transcribed all those interviews. So when the suitcase came, it was like the focus of the show. The tentative working title was Harold and Ilse, my parents. But as soon as the suitcase showed up, and I think it took me 3 days to open the suitcase. I mean, the suitcase arrived, and it was sent directly from Miroslav. He airmailed it. And this is a man who I don't think has very much means at all. Can you imagine airmailing a suitcase? He airmailed it, and I think we left it in the living room. I couldn't open it. It was way too overwhelming just to have it here in the house. But once the suitcase showed up, I knew that had to be a much larger part of what all the story was.
Like dictating your legacy, the next step in your.
Right. Exactly right.
What year was it that you received that?
I'm going to say 2015.
Okay, so it's only been less than 10 years then since you've gotten.
Yeah, 2015 or 2016. And I think the first iteration of the show was about 2018, something like that.
So you
Uh,
pretty, pretty quickly after that. And it's still evolving, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm always tweaking things, but we're now in the third iteration. The first iteration was the narrative and the music. And the second iteration, which was actually my real vision for it, was I hired somebody to create videos that were synced up to the music. So while I was playing, you were watching a video, but it became too much like a TV show or a movie. And I thought it just wasn't working as well because I thought the story was getting lost. So now during the program, when I do the narrative, I have, over the course of the program, I have, I think, maybe 70 photographs that I use to support the stories with a couple of videos. And then while I'm performing the music, there's no video component. There's no photographic component. All the focus is just on the music. So people are free to just let their mind drift wherever the music takes it. And it's really working. I mean, I'm extremely pleased with it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my local JCC community here to bring you to Charlotte, for you to perform it. And for those who are listening or watching and have an interest in possibly having Tim, bring the Suitcase to wherever you live, what would be the best way for them to follow up? First of all, go to the website, right? The Suitcase, is it thesuitcase.world? Is that what it is?
Exactly. If you go to the suitcase.world, contact information is there on that site.
Good. And then see if you and then contact him and see what it would take for him to be able to bring this piece to you, because clearly, this is a labor of love. Like I said, we were talking about the subtitle of Pizza Quest is a journey of self-discovery through pizza. And I could say
yes,
a journey of self-discovery through a suitcase.
Yeah, in spades. I mean, it is I always say I have spent my life trying to avoid the spotlight. I've been what you call a sideman, where I stand off kind of out of the lights and I'm just there supporting. I'm very I'm just really good at figuring out what someone else needs to make their dream come true, in terms of a song or anything like that. I mean, I'm kind of one of these behind the scenes kind of people. I can shine for a moment, but I was very comfortable figuring out, what can my contribution kind of be. So one of the things I really had to kind of deal with was being in the spotlight.
Yeah. Stepping out.
Yeah.
You're the front man now.
Yeah, the man, exactly.
Just to give some context to this for folks who obviously wouldn't know you, because you've played with some big names who they know the names. Who are some of the people that you've played with and toured with?
Well, I guess I've done some stuff with people like Keith Urban, Ray Price, Lori Morgan, Percy Sledge.
Sledge, that's got to go back.
Well, yeah, I mean, but look, you got to realize that, when I name drop, I was never, by the time I moved to Nashville, I wasn't really interested in being a touring musician. When I moved to Nashville, it was the ethic of being a musician was you were kind of in town, kind of doing the studio in town thing, or you were out of town on the road. And by the time I came here, I was more interested in learning more about the studio process. So I decided I was going to be in town. So I would sometimes go out, like, for instance, I played a weekend with Kenny Chesney. He was between fiddle players. They needed somebody. I think they had even figured out who their next fiddle player was going to be, but they needed someone to go play with him. So, yeah, okay, I'll go to Chicago for a weekend and play with Kenny Chesney. So it was just that kind of thing, because it was on the weekend. It wasn't during the week when sessions were more likely to happen. So more that kind of thing. So, but it's pretty normal when you're in Nashville. I mean, it was just so much music going on and so many people playing and so many people coming to make records that there was just an enormous amount of work. Of course, I'm talking about the pre-Napster period. Napster has really changed.
Is that Napster is
Spotify?
The early version of what Spotify now?
Yes, exactly. All that has changed the landscape enormously. But yeah, so I mean, in a lot of ways, it's been a very freeing experience to have a project that is so kind of completely my own or my family's, because it's really the stories. You know, in our business, we always say, if you have a good story, you've got everything.
Yeah.
But it's your job really not to mess it up. You know, this is a songwriter kind of town in that sense. So, yeah, but, you know, in a lot of ways, I think it has even made me more useful to other people because I'm so strongly identified with my own project that I have no need for any of my ego to be inserted into their project. I can really look at it in terms of just what it needs as opposed to, you know, trying to get a little myself in there kind of thing. So it's really fun in that regard. It's been.
Do you have any I think on the website I saw a list of bookings. Do you have some cities that you're going to be coming to over the next couple of months so the people who are listening to this might?
I don't. Since I kind of took some time away from booking the Suitcase. I went to Europe a couple times with a friend of mine, Sam Baker. We played the Netherlands in October. He's like an Americana, Texas artist with a very unusual story himself. And then we went to England in January, February. So no, but I'm about ready to make another big booking push, and I'm going to hire a publicist and really try to push things up to the next level.
Sometimes it takes that effort. Sam Baker, you mentioned. Can you just talk briefly? I know he went through some suffering of his own, didn't he? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know it's had an influence on you.
Enormously. Sam Baker, he grew up in Texas, kind of the fair-haired child, the quarterback in a small town, handsome, good-looking, unbelievably bright. Well, he was blown up in a terrorist attack when he was in Peru with some friends on a climbing adventure. And I think about 10 foreigners were killed. A bomb was actually placed in the train compartment that he was in. You know, the little, you know, in Europe and in South America, you know, they have compartments where they'll have 4, 5, 6 people sit and you face each other, little compartments. So this was a 4-person compartment, and someone placed a bomb right above his head. It was a poorly constructed bomb, so all the energy really went up. But it killed the 3 people so he spent a couple years off and on in hospitals undergoing about 16 major operations. So here's a man who had more horsepower up top than most of us and has gone through this really life-death experience. I mean, he literally died. I mean, he went through the tunnel and was going to the tunnel and then was kind of told, no, you probably need to turn around and go back.
Wow.
That whole kind of thing. So, and he's really learned a lesson in being really grateful for just whatever it is that you have and the beauty of the people. I mean, he often talks of the beauty of the people that a lot of times when someone sets off a bomb, they set off another bomb a few minutes later so that all the people that come there to try to help are also killed. And so any of these rescuers were kind of putting their own lives at risk, and all these beautiful people. So he's really had to rebuild his life. He couldn't do any of the things he had done before. And he had a career in finance for a while afterwards, but then really chose to become an artist. And Sam, he's one of these people that when you're in the presence of him, you can really feel like, I always say everybody wants to have a button on their shirt that says, Sam Baker is my friend.
Wow.
Because he's just being in the present. And, and I think we've all been around certain people that, you feel it in the air. I mean, there's a buzz, there's a vibration kind of going on.
Charism of.
Yeah, exactly. Very much so. And anyway, so a friend of he came, he wanted to make a record. And so a friend of mine and I, we made some records on him. And that's kind of how I first kind of got to know him. And I've played off and on with him now for 20 years. Sometimes he'll feel compelled to go in different directions and use other people, for his artistic vision at the time. But the last couple of years, we've been playing together again. And I mean, we're very good friends also.
Does Sam play an instrument himself, or is he the vocalist?
He plays guitar. Okay. He plays guitar. He's had to learn how to play it left-handed because his left hand is so damaged that he can't fret with it. And when I met him, he's in much better health now, but when I met him, he had to use a hair tie to bind his fingers together so the pick could be held. Wow. Kind of thing. But he's, to me, and of course he's much improved, but when I met him, I used to describe him as, here's a person who can't sing, who can't play guitar, doing the greatest music you'll ever hear in your life. Because there's just something, it was so elemental. And for me, what it really showed me, because I came out of, the classical tradition, this is how you do it, we have a proper way of doing it, and this is right, and this is wrong, and all these kinds of things. And here's a guy who is, if you want to talk in strictly technical terms, is just an absolute disaster. Yeah. In terms of, he makes Bob Dylan look like a virtuosic kind of musician, with beautiful, perfect tone and pitch. But the music came through. And so it really kind of taught me, okay, let's really look at what's important and how to. It kind
of goes back to what you said earlier. It's all about having a story to tell.
Yeah.
This man has a story to tell.
Yeah. And also being there and delivering it. Really, really, really feeling that story. Because, even though, at times my subject matter is difficult and sacred, it still has to be a good show to draw people in and keep their interest. And I'm always, very aware of that.
That is important. And so you were actually recently touring with Sam, right? You were in London and Europe with him, or?
Yeah, I was in the Netherlands, and actually just a few weeks ago, I went down to Texas with him. Sam just did a spoken word record with Rodney Crowell, and Rodney's a very well-known musician, songwriter, producer here in town, an artist in his own right, part of the Guy Clark kind of Texas tradition, if you know what that is. So we went down there and did 4 dates down in Texas with the two of them. That was just really big fun.
Any chance that he'll be touring the States and maybe come to the East Coast?
Sam does come to the East Coast. We were there 2 or 3 years ago. We played Boston. We played Club Passim, and we were in what's that pretty little town in the Berkshires, kind of James Taylor-esque. We were we were there.
Restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were there, and we played up the Hudson River Valley. So, but yeah, Sam will go there again. I don't quite know what his tour is right now.
Yeah, definitely let me know. We've got a nice music venue here, a Fillmore. We've got one of the Fillmores here in Charlotte, North Carolina. So
you have the Fillmore?
Yeah, we have a Fillmore performance hall here. Yeah.
Come on, really?
Well, I think it's a franchisable concept now.
Oh, my word, that is funny.
The producers, how they got the.
Yeah.
It's a great performance center, and a couple of other smaller venues as well. But
right.
We're not Austin, and we're not in Nashville yet, but we've got a nice burgeoning music scene.
Yeah.
Places. So let's drop that back, even go back a little bit further, because again, when I knew you, when we were kids, I knew you were in the orchestra. I knew you could play the violin, but did you ever imagine back then that you were going to become a professional musician as a career, or what was your educational trajectory plan?
Absolutely not. I was going to do something in math and science. My father was an engineer, and we always thought that music was just kind of an avocation, something that was was just part of your good life. Like my parents, my dad played piano and had played violin as a child. My mother used to play piano, though never here. I play my grandmother's violin, the violin that she brought from Germany. So that's actually part of the show too. My sister played cello. We used to play, there's a lot of literature for what they call piano trios, piano, violin, cello. We used to play that around in the living room, and it's kind of classical bluegrass music. That's kind of what I call it. I mean, because bluegrass music is really country chamber music or something. It's kind of what. But no, I never thought of it as a career. It's only when I attended college, and I was fairly unhappy in the college years, and I dropped out of college because I just didn't think that being an engineer was going to make me happy. And so I started playing bass guitar. And as any good young hippie would, I hitchhiked out to San Francisco and decided I was going to play bass guitar and join a band. Well, I thought about it and I said, well, look, I played violin all these years. So instead, I kind of turned back to the violin, and I went to a jam session, and it was really very disastrous for me. And I just decided, well, I better take some lessons again. I've kind of fallen off. I'm not really on my game. So I started taking classical lessons, and I really fell in love with doing that again. And so I did that pretty seriously for 3 or 4 years in San Francisco and found my way to a really good teacher. In terms of staying within classical world, I kind of got fairly discouraged after a while because I kind of took it seriously fairly late in life. And your body most people seem to believe that your body is kind of grown by then, and your ability to kind of improve your technique on a large level by then has kind of passed. So I took a summer off. When I was studying violin, I was driving school buses for a living, which was really great because I didn't do the middle day run where you shuttle the kindergarten kids back. So I just take the school bus and drive down to the beach and practice in the bus for 4 hours till the next pickup. And it was really a wonderful life. And so I took a summer off from violin, and then I went trout fishing that whole summer up in Montana and Idaho, and it was just wonderful. I've always loved the mountains and camping and hiking. And I loved it up there so much that I just decided I wanted to go there. So I applied for a job as a school bus driver in a little town, and they wound up offering me another job instead as a teacher's aide. And so I did that for a year in a little town, Phillipsburg, Montana, which was between Missoula and Butte in the western Montana mountains. And it was just, Montana back then was like, those were the dental floss days. And it was really a very, very different than it is now. But yeah, it was really just absolutely wonderful. Couldn't love it. And so then I spent a year there, and then I moved to Missoula, which is kind of it's kind of the Chapel Hill, you might say, of Montana, the Madison of Wisconsin, whatever, the Berkeley of Wisconsin, of Montana. And it was just wonderful. And so I joined a band there, and they were losing their fiddle player. And this band was like really a reggae rock and roll band, but they had a fiddle player. And so that was kind of my first real experience playing non-legit music, as we kind of call it. And then that morphed from one thing to another. After that, I joined a bluegrass band, and that was just really amazing. I learned a great deal. The guitar player was from North Carolina, the banjo player and the other guitar player, the banjo player was from Kentucky, the other guitar player was from Virginia, the mandolin player was from California, and the bass players from Texas. And I mean, some of these guys were really dyed in the wool. I mean, especially the ones from the Southeast. And so I learned a great deal. And then I morphed into playing country music, more dance band music, just because there's a bit more money in it to be made, what's called commercial music. And then I did that. So that's, go ahead.
Paying your dues period of life. Through the twists and turns of just following the road where it leads you, you're getting
right.
big.
Yeah, and this was all a period. I mean, that period, I'd say from, 1970 to 1982 or something like that. I spent the better part of every day practicing a lot. Even if I was working a job, even if I was working at a nightclub 5 nights a week, or if I had a day job or whatever, I mean, I practiced and learned incessantly. I mean, I was buying records like crazy. Like one time, I mean, and of course, I've never had a lot of money, so I'm living in Phillipsburg, and I decide I need to get a new record, learn some stuff. So I hitchhiked 80 miles to Missoula, bought the latest Asleep at the Wheel record, and hitchhiked back. I almost had to walk the last 30 miles because no one would pick me up, but someone picked me up.
During that time, you could do that.
Exactly, you could. Exactly right. Well, yeah, it was a very different time. And also at that age, you're just kind of invincible and able to handle with whatever you never think anything's going to happen to you. And that's part of the reason kind of why, because you can kind of handle whatever shows up, people pulling guns on you in bars and just whatever crazy, it's just you don't think anything of it.
And the magic and the mystique of the times that we were
right, exactly.
A little bit protected somehow for no good reason. We felt divinely protected.
Yeah, exactly right. And then in 1980, I chased the bluegrass circuit to the Southeast and moved to North Carolina. And I wound up actually getting a job 5 nights a week at a country band, just the most amazing players. And I'd really never had the thing where the whole band was these dyed-in-the-wool, born in the South Dixie boys.
Yeah.
And it was just a remarkable experience. I mean, by then I was a very good player, but I could easily consider myself the weak link of that particular band. I mean, it was like, and of course, that was exactly where you wanted to be. You wanted to be the worst person. Because oh my word, it was an amazing experience. And I did that, and then I kind of did that for a while, and then I had a girlfriend, and she was kind of dropping out of the white collar world. And so I taught her to play guitar some, and she already knew how to play piano. And we kind of just formed a duo. We played in the Rocky Mountain West till about 89 or 90, something like that. And of course,
exists from that era. Did you have any vinyl left exist from that period, or tapes?
Oh, I've got some tapes. I got a lot of tapes that tape tends to oxidize over the years, and I should really get that transferred onto onto digital formats. That's kind of, but yeah, I've got boxes set. I've got a lot of that stuff, and and then I moved back to North Carolina for a few years, and then decided that I did not want to be 60 years old and not have experienced Nashville. So really my goal in moving to Nashville was kind of to see what it's like. And I feel like I've done that in spades. And it has been just the greatest adventure on the planet because, man, it's like, one of my mottos is, I think I'm the best fiddle player on my block, but I haven't met everyone yet.
Yeah, right.
Because it is like, and I swear, we moved up to Goodlettsville, my wife and I, and right across the street from me lived this wunderkind, Deanie Richardson, who now has a band called Sadie. She was playing with Vince Gill, and I mean, she plays on the Opry. I mean, she was just, it's kind of like having Isaac Stern across the street, or Perlman. I mean, it was just that. But look, that's the beauty of it. And that's what, of course, the challenge of it is that, boy, there's a lot of it's almost like you're in the wine store and, like, okay, you need fiddle on this record or you need steel on this record. Well, what kind of steel would I like? Am I looking for something more ethereal? Or I looking something, just really, you really get to, now, of course, everybody can kind of do a lot of things, but you're really, your palette gets very refined because there are just so many incredible players and you start to appreciate what's unique about each one.
Well, as we say on Pizza Quest, it's more about the quest than it is about the pizza. And in your case, the quest, and we also say, and the quest never ends.
Yeah, the quest never ends.
Right. Yours has been unfolding. I think this period you're in now with both the music and have it all come together and focus through this performance piece that you do called The Suitcase, which we want to remind people to look this up, thesuitcase.world, and look at the website and that you can hear some more snippets of it there. This could be maybe not the final crowning achievement of your career. It could be the start of a whole new adventure. And so we have to come back on Pizza Quest, when after you've taken it again to the next level. And we'll keep talking about this because I'm fascinated. Who knew back then when we were kids that we'd all end up where we ended up. But it's fun that we were able to catch up again, come full circle, and see where it all led.
Exactly right. And I think the other thing, and I will just say this because we're well along in our years now. We're both in our 70s, but the thing,
we're in our Act 3 phase.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but the thing about it is that I think the biggest misconception I had about being old was that you still feel really young inside. And I'm still extremely excited about music and have lists of things that I want to do. And I'm writing more music. I've started doing some gigs in town just as a looping musician. The next piece I want to do is on Israel. I haven't quite figured out kind of how to do it yet, but that's in the works. And yeah, I mean, you just want to, I don't know, I think my wife thought that when I turned 70, I'd sell the instruments and would buy a motorhome or something.
Or you'd be
it's like, my wife has a good one. She goes, music, is it a passion or a mental illness? And it's a bit of both.
That's a great question. That's the Zen koan of today.
Exactly.
Tim, I want to thank you so much for sharing all these stories and bringing us again this new piece, the Suitcase, which I'm really looking forward to seeing it performed live. If I have to fly somewhere to watch it, I will just be posted. And please come back. Again, we'll get you back when you've been out on the circuit and have some more stories to share on this new round.
I would love to. Thank you so much. It's such a.
The world is in a strange state of flux right now, and your piece, while it looks back, is really about what's happening today, very much today. And
very much so.
The journey never ends. Neither does the Jewish diaspora and the challenges that all of us have, no matter what our faith backgrounds are, in trying to navigate very difficult times. And music and art and what you're doing is a big part of the process for all of us in our own journeys. So
exactly. Well, my pleasure. I look forward to next time.
Appreciate it. And thank all of you for being with us on Pizza Quest, whether you're watching us on our YouTube and video version or through our website or on our audio version through Heritage Radio Network. Keep coming back. Every week we have a new guest and we're exploring everyone's journeys. And by the way, before we lose you completely, is there any great pizza in Nashville that people should know about if they're coming? Do you have a place?
Well, I'll tell you, pizza is really. I tend not to eat a lot of pizza. I'm very just because it's very hard for me to eat one slice, and I will eat the entire pizza. So I can eat a whole pizza. I am one of those people, but there are many different places. I mean, there's all kinds of people undoing. There's a place in town called Nikki's Coal Fired. They have a coal-fired oven.
Yeah.
There's Nick and Rudy's that are these two. That's not their name. I forget that was something else. But anyway, these two kids that actually my daughter went to school with that have started their own little pizza chain, and they make pizzas. The pizza almost looks like it's like amoeba shaped. I would say it is. It's just. Yeah, I don't know how else to put it. And they do that, and they've actually even opened up a satellite there. And then, of course, there are people doing all kinds of variations on a regular shape kind of pizza. One of the big ones is 5 Points Pizza in town, and there's one not too far from us. But yeah, I mean, Nashville has actually become very much a foodie town. I think there's a lot of interest in food in general. I think Charlotte, I'm sure, is the same way.
Is forged ahead. It's kind of like, along with Austin and other music cities, also seem to have great culinary scenes. And so maybe next time when we have you on, we'll spend a little bit more time talking about food. We'll pick your brain on some of the great food destination places in Nashville. And I can't wait to have you back on again. So once again, Tim, thank you for joining us. Thank all of you for being with us on Pizza Quest, and we'll see you at the next episode.
Pizza Quest is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.